Okay, so here we are on page Samach. So this is the 8th chapter of Orchot Tzaddikim, and we are starting the chapter which is titled Shar HaAchzarius. Shar HaAchzarius, which means, the gate of meanness. That wasn't the word I was thinking, but I was thinking of the word callousness, to be callous, unfeeling to others. Cruel would also be a good word. Achzarius hi efech arachmanus. Cruelty is the opposite of mercy. K'dichsiv, as it says, achzori hema v'lo yirachemu. That they are callous or mean, and they are not merciful. So we see their opposites. Vein amida hazos nimtses b'tzaddikim. This attribute is not found by the righteous. Achi b'nefesh hareshoim, but it's certainly in the soul of the wicked. K'dichsiv, as it says, v'rachamei reshoim achzari. The mercy of the wicked is mean, is cruel. This, of course, can be understood in many ways. One way is that even the mercy of the wicked is mean because they're starting from a mean position. So, right, the Achzari would take a person's life, but when he's merciful, he won't take the person's life, he'll just cut off his arm. So that mercy is mean. Another possibility is the wicked person seems to be acting merciful. It's really only because he has designs and ulterior motives to take advantage of another person, which of course is mean. So you have to be suspect of a wicked person's kindness. This attribute of meanness is also found by those who are brazen-faced. It says, Goy az panim, a nation which is brazen-faced, asher lo yisa panim lezaken, who will not show favor to the elderly, v'na'ar lo yachon, nor will they have mercy over a young person. So you see here then that this is also an attribute for the azeh panim. We've already discussed here in previous chapter the evil of the attribute of being brazen-faced. Tilmad ruach achzarius, go and learn how evil this achzarius and meanness is. Ki li'inyan tashlume ish ra hamoyred ve'hamamre ne'emar achmer yivakesh ra u'malach achzari yeshulach bo. Regarding the retribution against an evil person who rebels, it says, achmer yivakesh ra u'malach achzari yeshulach bo. A rebellious person will seek evil, and a destroying angel will be sent against him. Yeah. So somebody who has this attribute is going to stir up divine anger against himself. Kol achzari ein bo gemilus chasadim. Anybody who's mean and cruel, he doesn't have the ability to show kindness to others. K'dichsiv, it says, Gomel nafsho ish chased. A kind and giving person gives to his own soul. V'oicher she'ero achzari. But a mean person will harm even his own flesh and blood relatives. Achzari rochak me'od min midos tovos. And such a person is very far from good attributes. Ki lo yirachem alanim, he won't have mercy on the poor. V'lo yalvei lehem b'shas techoikam, he won't loan money to them in their time of need. V'lo yiten lehem me'uman, he won't give them anything. K'dichsiv, it says, malvei Hashem choinen dal. Somebody who does chen for the poor person, that's as if he's loaning to Hashem. Meaning Hashem takes care of everyone. This poor person is currently lacking. A person who provides for the poor is as if he's loaning to Hashem. That's a very good thing. But somebody who's mean and will not do that, is very far from Hashem. I wonder if that's also perhaps what he means here. Malve Hashem is to loan, but the author could be understanding to be related to the word livui, melave, like melava malka, to escort the queen, the Shabbos queen. So maybe that's how the verse can also be read. Malve Hashem choinen dal, somebody who takes care of the poor, he is with Hashem, and therefore he has good attributes. But a person who is not concerned about the poor will be very far from Hashem and therefore far from good attributes. And furthermore it says, it is good for a person who, again, provides for and loans other people and guides his ways with righteousness, with justice. Happy is the portion of one who thinks about the needy. Yimalatehu, when a day of evil comes for him, Yimalatehu Hashem, he will be spared from this by God. So somebody who takes care of other people in their times of need, when he is in a dire straits, God will take care of him. In a way, it's kind of related. If a person's taking care of the poor people is like loaning Hashem, he's like covering for Hashem right now in this difficult time. So when he's in a difficult time, Hashem will cover for him. All of these are the opposite of a mean, cruel, and sensitive and callous person. Because this mean, callous person is not interested in other people's needs. He won't care about the difficult times that other people have. Like we saw regarding David HaMelech, Vani b'chaldosam levushay sak, Inesi betzom nafshi, Utfilosi al cheki toshuv. David HaMelech says about his own enemies that when they were sick, I wore sackcloth. I oppressed myself with fasting, and my prayer was constantly within me for them. So he had great attributes of Rahmanis, so much so that he was even praying for his enemies when they were in times of need. Ube'iyov ksiv, and regarding Job it says, Im loy bechisi likshe yom agma nafshi le'evyon. He's testifying about his good character, saying, I should be held responsible if, in other words, or God is my witness, if I didn't cry for those who are needy on a daily basis, or causing anguish to my soul on account of the poor. And we know Job is righteous. So you see that he had empathy. That would be kind of perhaps the opposite. Cruelty and empathy. Cruelty would be actually to proactively harm someone, or even if he's not proactively harming him, he's just refraining from helping him, that's also a form of cruelty. That's callousness. But a person who helps other people, is concerned about their needs, takes care of the poor, and so forth and so on, that person has empathy. So it's the way of the righteous to be empathetic. This attribute of achzarios can only be found by people who have a temperament which is akin to that of lions. Shetorfim v'choimsim. They rip and they prey upon others. Ube'et asher tizchazek hanefesh haka'asonis al adam, and when an angry soul overcomes a person, az barachas midas rachmanos, then mercy departs. V'achzarios miskaberes laharois velintos. This meanness then takes sway in order to break and to uproot. It says, achzarios hema v'shetef af. I mean anger, and a shetef af, whatever that means, kind of like an outpouring of anger. Then chema kechema shel achzarius, and there's nothing worse than the anger of meanness. Regarding the anger of God, we find that anger can be placated. Baroges, what's baroges? Anger. Baroges, in excitement, anger. Rachem tiskor, remember your righteousness. Remember your attribute of mercy. There's another explanation of this. We say it also in Tachanun. Barogez rachem tiskor, in your anger, God, at us because of our misdeeds. Barachem Avram Avinu, whose meter was rachamim. Barachem tiskor, remember schus avos. Remember the schut of Avraham. If we're not righteous, he was. So our being his descendants have mercy on us in his merit. When a person is angry, generally speaking, he can't have mercy. He's very far from being merciful. And furthermore, this attribute of cruelty is in the soul of a person. And it's expressed in scenarios of a person wanting to take vengeance from his enemies. As it says, Lo yachmol b'yom nakom. This angry person will not have mercy on the day of vengeance. Perush, kishayesh nakoma ein chemla. When a person is full with the desire of vengeance, then there is no mercy. El achzarius, only cruelty. V'akosuv omer, and the verse says, Lo sikoin v'lo sitor. Don't take vengeance and don't have a grudge. Afilu litor belev, who's haranu. Even to have a grudge in a person's heart is prohibited. Certainly, he shouldn't do something proactively to harm his friend. Hello, even if this person falls without transgressing, he should not be happy. Like it says, when your friend falls, your enemy falls, don't be joyous, even though he's your enemy. Feel bad about his fall. Otherwise, you're acting cruel. You're acting with spite and with vengeance. And in his slipping up, your heart shall not be gladdened. A person who takes vengeance, he is not a person who is able to overcome his attributes. He will never forgive the people who offend him. And this causes a perpetuation of argumentation and hatred. And we already know how great the attribute of peace is. Therefore, this meanness, which causes a person to be spiteful, jealous, taking vengeance, will prevent a person from forgiving those who do wrong to them, although a person should be forgiving. And in his anger, he'll just be drawn to more argumentation and more hatred, and that's going to be antithetical to the whole purpose of everything, which is shalom.
In the world today, if people forgave what people did them bad, it would be a different world.
It would be a different world. On the other hand, it's true that we have to be careful not to forgive people for very extreme things. And held them unaccountable so that people can develop a feeling, well, they can do anything and be forgiven for it. That's also true. But certainly regarding all of the petty things that bother us and disturb us and make us irate and make us feel that we want to take vengeance against other people by saying and all that. The world and our relations, our interpersonal relationships, and just the feeling that we are will be much different. You're not going to go forgive Hitler, Chas v'shalom.
But I was also thinking of that.
Of course. But he's referring to the more common kind of interpersonal glitches that you have with people. People step on each other's toes and they make comments that aren't the kindest and nicest comments to make, and so forth and so on. It's better to, as much as possible, to be overlooking of these things, and at most, rather than feel some animosity in your heart towards such a person, it would be better to actually say, you made a comment, and it would be one thing if you didn't mean it, but it seems pretty clear to me that you meant it. What's going on? Why would you say such a thing? Did I harm you in any way? Why would you do such a thing? In order to try and diffuse the tension and the animosity. But to get angry and therefore become unforgiving and therefore unmerciful, the person might say, what are you talking about? You You didn't notice what you did to me? No, I didn't. What do you mean you didn't know? How could you didn't notice? Yesterday you came into the lunchroom and you bumped into me with the force of a 18-wheeler. All of my soup spilled all over my shirt and on the floor, and I had to go cleaning it up. And you go walking by as if nothing happened, and you wonder why. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I really did not notice. I'll have to be more careful. I apologize. Now I understand why you said what you said. Whatever. But if you didn't initiate that conversation, then he would be fuming for being bumped into, and he would be fuming for being spoken to that way. And each one's anger would just cause another remark and another action until it become escalated.
But you find like in business that people than in other people, and it's very hard for people to forgive one another. It's like,
Yeah, I heard somebody wrote an email to me recently asking for advice regarding somebody who made a terribly ugly, insulting remark about the person and his family, and I can't even imagine, even if this person was somehow at fault, I can't imagine what context would have catalyzed that type of nasty remark that this person's saying the other person said. And people, there are people that are just, mean, and they unbridle their tongues and say the most awful things, and they don't think twice about it. And it would be, you're right, it would be, the world would be a much different place if we were more careful and more sensitive and so forth and so on. The Gemara says, you have no vessel which is a vessel for peace. We have no greater vessel to receive the bounty of Hashem than the vessel of peace. And therefore, people who are angry and who are constantly, fueling the flames of argumentation and so forth and so on, they're not going to have any vessel for blessing in their lives because they have no peace. That's what he's getting here at the end of that paragraph when he says, Kfar yadato matov umanoim midas shalom. Right? It's obvious how wonderful the attribute of peace is. But a person who's pursuing argument and he's harboring grudges, such a person will never have peace and therefore never have blessing. Ubichlal hachzarios, included in this attribute of meanness, hagozel chavero meuma mishalo. If he steals something from someone, ubezeh mitzayoto, and this causes him pain, anguish. Monish gadol yesh legoizel ani, even greater punishment comes to a person who steals from a poor person. V'chayavin alei misa. He says, you would even be liable for the death penalty. I don't think that's true. Meaning, that's not, of course, the halacha, that the person is not liable to the death penalty for stealing from a poor person. But it's as if he would be liable for the death penalty. Why? Because when he steals from the poor person, he's taking, he's by definition taking the bare life's necessities, because as a poor person, he's got nothing else. So that's like taking his life.
That's correct.
And therefore, stealing from a person who has nothing is like taking his life, and therefore he could be liable for the death penalty, conceptually speaking. Al tigzal dal kidalhu. Don't steal from the poor person because he's poor. What do you mean? Don't steal from him because he's poor. You can't steal from anybody because it's forbidden to steal. The point here is there's an extra prohibition. It's extra stringent to steal from a poor person. It says afterwards, Ki Hashem Yariv Ribam, God will fight their fight. V'kovo es koivehem nofesh. And he will curse those that have cursed them. Right? So you see from here that somebody who steals from a poor person, somebody who harms a poor person, somebody who's mean to a poor person, he's like taking on God. Which is kind of like the parallel of what we saw before. A person who takes care of the needs of the poor is as if he's loaning money, as it were. He's loaning to God. Somebody who is mean against the poor, it's as if he's being mean against Hashem. Just like you can rely on Hashem to pay back what you've loaned him, as it were, by giving to the poor, a person can certainly expect Hashem to take retribution against a person who's harmed the poor. Even though there are certainly transgressions which are much more severe than theft, the punishment for theft is great. It says, regarding the generation of the flood, Ketz kol basar ba lefanai. The end of all flesh comes before me. Ki mola haaretz chomas mipnehem. Because the earth has become full of theft. That's chomas, theft. So you see how serious the punishment of theft is. It had to do with catalyzing the flood. Amru Rabbeinu, the sages said, Kupa malea avanos, ein mekatreg bechulan kmo gazel. Gemara in Sanhedrin says, if a person had a whole cauldron or a whole bucket full of transgressions, including all of the different ones, none of them are mekatreg, meaning none of them kind of speak evil for a person like gezel. There might be others that are more severe, and the punishment might be greater. But theft is a big kitrug. Umishim etzayer yosom v'almona, somebody who causes anguish to the orphan or to the widow, begozel o behachloma, either through theft or through embarrassing them, ubechol minei tsar, or any other form of tsar, anguish, mischayev misa b'dei shamayim, he's liable for the death penalty from heaven. Suppose this elderly person or this widow or this orphan has stolen something or is acting in the wrong way somehow, and the person either wants to rebuke them or challenge their behavior or take them to a rabbi to clarify some dispute between them. That, of course, he doesn't have to be concerned. And their response is, how could you do this to me? I'm an orphan or I'm a widow and you're mistreating me and so forth and so on. So that's not true. Right? Don't mistreat others, and you don't have to be, and then don't claim that their desire for justice is callous. No, that's not true. What it's talking about, taking advantage of these people who are often, on a more weaker end in society, like the widow or like the orphan. Don't take advantage of them. But if they're taking advantage of their weakness to take advantage of others, and then you want to call them to task for that or make them held accountable for the wrongs that they're doing, and then they claim you're causing anguish to a widow or an orphan, that's not wrong. The point is, you're not allowed to attack a defenseless orphan, but you're certainly allowed to protect yourself from an offensive orphan. Right? And that's the point. That being said, a person can cut these people a little more slack than others. If the widow or the orphan are acting in a way which is maybe a bit, let's say, coarse, or they impose themselves on others more than what's generally considered to be socially acceptable, right? One should, this would be a type of situation where a person should be more tolerant with them for these types of things than with other people. And not overlooking these things, but rather, holding them accountable for these types of things might be considered being cruel to the orphan. Because you're really supposed to show them an extra degree of empathy and of help where you can. And if they're acting in a way which is not normal, that's because their situation in society is not normal. An elderly defenseless woman or a young defenseless child might come to have claims against society, or might be alone and lonely and therefore be more demanding on other people's time and so forth and so on. Right, within reason, you should respond to that. But if they're just being nasty and intentionally manipulating other people under the guise of being a widow or an orphan, that's wrong. miyad oshkehem, and so too the judges who have in their power the ability to save them, these defenseless widows and orphans, from those who might otherwise be trying to take advantage of them. Ve'enam danim din yosam v'almana, and they don't judge the judgment favorably for the widow or the orphan. Bnei mavishem, these judges are designated for death. K'dichsiv, as it says, kol almana v'yosam lo sa'anun. An orphan and a widow you shall not afflict. Uksiv, imarne sa'arne oisoi, if you do afflict them, ki im tza'ok yitzak alai, if they call out to me, shema eshma tza'akoso, I will surely hear his call. Therefore, a person has to be very careful not to offend these people, because their tear and their prayer is very close to Hashem, and a person can very quickly bring divine retribution on himself for abusing these people. Even furthermore, it says, "V'chara api," I became angry. "V'haragti eschem b'chorev," and I killed you all with a sword. "Uvenechem yesoimim," and your own children will be orphans. You're abusing an orphan, so your children, right? The Torah says about that person, right? His children will also be orphans. He's abusing orphans, so his children will be orphans. There's mida keneged mida. And also, neshechem almonos, your wives will become widows. Keneged inu almonos, benechem yesoimim, keneged inu yesomim. Neshechem almonos, wives becoming widows, corresponds to a person's offending the widow, and his children becoming orphans, that corresponds to his abusing orphans. V'hametzayer kol ish Yisrael, anybody who afflicts any other Jew, over balotase, he transgresses a don't. Shenemar, it says, lo yisoinu ish es amiso, a person shall not afflict his fellow. V'zei lo sonu ba'oinas dvarim asur amur. And this idea of abusing or harming your fellow Jew is talking about ba'oinas dvarim, words. Amur Rabbeinu zichrono v'rocha, kol ha'sharim ninalim hutz misharei oinoah. All of the gates have been locked except for the gates of oinoah. Meaning, if a person puts a claim in heaven against somebody else for abusing him verbally, that will always be heard. Therefore, a person should be very careful not to harm his friend in any way, neither by deed nor by dibur, by word. Neither by deed nor by word. A person who steals from his friend is as if he has stolen from his soul. And that's why we said before about stealing from the poor person as if he's liable for the death penalty, because he's stolen his bare necessities, which is the source of life. His having taken this poor person's life by stealing his basic needs is tantamount to his having taken a life. And therefore the death penalty. Same thing here. Even he stole from him just something small, like a relatively insignificant coin, mischayev misa, he's liable for the death penalty. Again, that, at least for a Jew, that's not the actual halacha. Gamzei mibinas achzarios. This is also from bad, cruel attributes. Why? Because he's stealing from other people. Hamotzi shemra al chavero, and also includes spreading a bad rumor about someone else. Ubezei gorem tsar uvoshes, and in spreading this evil rumor, he causes anguish and embarrassment. V'motzi shemra bifgama mishpacha ein lo kapara olamis. A person who spreads a bad rumor about somebody's family, such a person is never forgiven. Why is that? Let's say he says, for example, this family are mamzerim. So now this family will never be able to marry others, and therefore such speech will also never be atoned for. He can never atone for what he said because because what he said is always injuring this family from generation to generation. It's amazing we're reading this because I just got this email yesterday I was talking about earlier. Just shocked at what one person said according to this email about another person, involving a lot of the things that we're discussing here. It's really hard to, I can't believe it. So we'll be able to use this material hopefully to help the person. Okay. Let's stop here, okay? On Samach Beis.